people who were warning against socialism, like Isaiah Berlin, for instance, like Ayn Rand, and so on and so on. The people who the New North conservatives, like Samuel Huntington, the Paul Wolfowitz, and so on and so on. So we also can see many Jewish intellectuals who were also warning against socialism. And you can also perceive Jewish people who are warning about some other Jewish craziness, like for instance Mr. Finkelstein warning us about something they called a Holocaust industry. So that the idea that because the Jews were nearly all murdered, so they should be given something as some sort of compensation. Okay, so that was started really in the 60s and 70s, and Mr. Finkelstein was against it. And you can also perceive Jewish intellectuals who were socialists but then changed the front. For instance, Alain Finkielkraut or André Glucksmann, the French, for instance, and ex-Marxists who changed the front. Okay, so it's not so simple with this thing, but I'm also seeing that there are many Jewish intellectuals, and they are usually the source of stereotypes about Jewish people, and you can either observe that they are pro-socialist or sometimes very aware of socialism, and in a negative way. So it's a thing. Okay, when it comes to this oversensitivity of the Jewish people, you must remember, as the Jewish English historian Jonathan Israel has said, rightly put it, that they have the right to be a little bit oversensitive because they died in a very huge number, huge percentage. The Jews today in the world, it's like 20 million people, and when it was during the days of the World War II, it was like 12, 13, and almost half of it was killed. So they have the right to be oversensitive, says Jonathan Israel, and perhaps they have, because but it's very symptomatic that the other wandering nations, who live mostly in diasporas, not in their own lands, like Kurds, like Armenians, like Roma people, that is the Gypsies, they were all very often persecuted, and the Jews have been persecuted on a mass scale already in Russia in the second half of the 19th century. So we have every right to be a little bit oversensitive, although it vexes other people because it creates an impression that their suffering is somehow more important, which is not nice for the other people. For instance, the Armenians were also almost murdered by the Turks in the early 20th century. So but the alienation is very typical, that they are alienated, and because of that they have these tendencies which are contradictory. The other turn to Hasidism, for instance. The Hasids are mostly very traditional, wearing something similar that I'm wearing now, and they are perceiving the idea that the men should really do only intellectual work, studying Torah, studying other things, maybe become, for instance, official of the state or deal with some business, but don't do physical work. This was reserved for women, which is very exotic from the European point of view. But it's not very exotic at all when you mention, for instance, Mexican people. In Mexico, it's very typical, and in the other parts of South America, it's very typical that the women are doing most of the physical work in the household. Okay, so the idea that they are chosen nation, it was something new, but in the ancient times. But also you must remember that they were the first maybe to come up with the idea that one single God, but they were not the only ones. You can mention Ahura Mazda, you can mention the cult of Solis Invicti in the late ancient Rome, you can mention Zoroastrianism, and so on. But this is the only thing when you have the one God and the chosen nation in the same time, because there are nations who are have concerned with one religion, one nation, one religion. For instance, the Japanese and the Shinto. But the Shinto is a polytheistic religion. So it's a different situation. So to some extent, Jewish are really very special. Okay. So it is not even today so easy to become a Jew. You must really be involved with all those things, and because of they have